So my name is Arthur Protasio, and the name of the studio is Fableware Narrative Design. As the title implies, it is focused on storytelling for different platforms, including games. And the name of the game that we have here is Sword Legacy Omen.
Alrighty, and could you give us an overview of the game?
Sure. So Sword Legacy is actually a retelling of the Excalibur legend. We combine three creative pillars, which are the aesthetics. So that's a very Black Cauldron-ish style. We wanted to go for a Disney animation, but a darker Disney animation, and Black Cauldron is one of the references. We don't want it to go also for brutal combat, but one that was also strategic. So in that sense, we have a strong inspiration from Game of Thrones. But also we wanted to tell a tale that would be nostalgic, familiar, and also have a twist at the same time. So we went for the Excalibur Legends, and you get to play as Uther Pendragon, even before he earns the Pendragon surname, and Merlin, as they go after the Excalibur sword. So it is a King Arthur prequel, or origins, as you will.
And this game is available now?
Yes, it's a tactical RPG available for PC Windows. We released it in 2018. Our publisher is Team 17 for the PC version. And it's available on Steam, GOG. It's easy to find for PC. But we're really excited to take it to other platforms next year, consoles specifically.
And what consoles are you aiming for?
So we're definitely going for the three main ones, which are Xbox One, PS4, and Switch. But we did have a lot of demand, players asking for it on the Switch, which is why we're really excited to take it to make it more accessible to players who haven't had the chance to play Sword Legacy yet.
How large is the team that has worked on Sword Legacy Omen?
So at peak, we were a team of 7. I handled the creative direction along with the game designer and also the narrative direction. So we had, I was the lead writer, and we had a producer, 2D artist, 3D artist, programmer. It was actually a co-production between 2 indie studios in Brazil. So one of them being Fableware, my studio, and the other being Firecast. We got together because we wanted to create a product that we knew that on our own we wouldn't be able to do so, but as 2 indie studios putting our strengths together, it was possible, and for us it's an amazing achievement.
And what's one thing that you would like people to take away that when they see or play the game?
Okay, that's a very good question. So when it comes to Sword Legacy, there are a few things that I'd love players to bear in mind. From a tactical perspective, because it is a tactical RPG, you have to bear in mind that characters in the game don't even level up. You don't get points to make them stronger. What you do is you get equipment, and you can use that to buff your stats, and you get renown to unlock new skills. So thinking strategically is absolutely crucial in Sword Legacy. There's never a point in the game where it's too hard because you have done something wrong in terms of not getting the right equipment. It's always about using the right skills and thinking about strategic positioning. Back attacks are unblockable. Willpower is a feature that we're really happy to have in the game, which affects the morale, the courage of the characters. So if your character is feeling courageous, you can use that willpower point to buff stats. But if those willpower points run out, then that same character or even enemy can panic. So you need to be mindful of the psychological state of your characters, but at the same time you need to be strategic in how you use those skills. That's from a tactical perspective. From a narrative perspective, it is a story about obsession. So what I want players to be aware of is when you're done with the story, bear in mind that this is a retelling of the Excalibur legend, so it is tragic, it is dramatic, and the world is actually a bleak world, but it goes to show how humans behave in different scenarios and how it is so easy to let our desires and our obsessions get a hold of us and take us down a darker path.
And it's an interesting concept, like where you have the King Arthur legend, but it's not necessarily focused on King Arthur himself. We've seen a lot of stories that just put him right at the center of the story, and whereas this is one where you sort of follow the adventures of his companions. And what was it about the companions that you thought would be a good shift away from Arthur as the central character?
Okay, awesome question as well. We wanted to bring to players that feeling of nostalgia because we were dealing with the universal myth. But we always wanted to bring something new as well. And if you go and research the Excalibur legends, of course, there are many tales about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. But there are also some lesser-known tales about Merlin, about Uther, Igraine, and these are stories that we wanted to tap into, not only to make these tales more, bring exposure to them to people throughout the whole world, but also show that the prophecy of the Excalibur sword is not something specific to Arthur. In this game, for example, Uther is after the Excalibur sword, and I'm not going to spoil too much, but there is a part in which Merlin says, "This sword is not meant for you." But Uther doesn't really care about that. And we wanted to play with that idea that what is the role that destiny plays in our lives? Is destiny really a thing? Are we in charge of our own future? Do our actions really pave the way that we want to go forth? So we wanted to use different characters that would allow us to get access to this kind of like these different opinions and critical views. One of the characters in the game, for example, is a Felix. He's a priest, and he represents the Order of Terra. The Order of Terra, throughout the game, actually plays a very important political role because it is basically the monotheistic church that is growing in that scenario. And you have several discussions between Merlin and Felix because they are actually polar opposites. So we wanted to use these companion characters to explore different themes like religion, like politics, like desires, like even you have characters that are non-humans. How does that racial factor equate into the relationships between these? So the band of characters in Sword Legacy, we like to call them, they're misfits, because the truth is they don't really need to like each other to go after that specific quest. They just happen to be in this situation where to survive they need to move forward together, because if they don't do so, they'll die. But in doing so, they learn more about each other, and so does the player. And you just get to see how social interactions are not really ever totally under our control.
As a tactical RPG, there's a lot to pull from, such as we've seen success with the Banner Saga,
Yeah.
We've seen Transistor, that's the one I was going for. And how does Sword Legacy, how is it inspired, or how does it set itself apart from those previous successes?
Okay, so Sword Legacy does both, actually. As a project, as a product, we were deeply and are deeply inspired by amazing games, some of them back from the day and some more recent, like Final Fantasy Tactics. From a board game perspective, Hero Quest is a very strong reference for Sword Legacy. Baldur's Gate, of course. And then we've got more recent ones like Darkest Dungeon, Banner Saga, and even the Supergiant games like Transistor. I would say that what we did in terms of referencing these games was really drawing for them what we really liked. As an example, Banner Saga really stands out for its visual art, and we wanted to do the same. We wanted to have a game that would have its unique art style and stand out, and that's why we chose this darker, more gothic look, but for Western animation style, based on the Black Cauldron. On the other hand, if we take a look like at games like Darkest Dungeon, they also have like a sanity system. Like the willpower, but Banner Saga does have willpower as well. But what we did was that we combined these two systems, this feature present in both games, but we made it in a way that it's actually a gamble. Willpower is very useful in combat if you know how to use it, but if you use too much, then it can be a negative aspect for your characters. Even the enemies as well. If you know how to play strategically, you're going to get the enemies to panic, and that's very good for you as a player. So in Banner Saga, willpower buffs your character. In Darkest Dungeon, willpower usually has negative effects. And we managed to create the system in which it can go both ways, depending on how you decide to act. Another example, we use action points rather than, for example, in XCOM, you have a movement and then attack, and if you choose to attack, you can't move. And what we wanted to do is go back to the action point system, where as long as you have enough points, you can choose to walk with one character, then switch to another one, attack, then walk again, use a mobility skill. We have a strong emphasis, another reference, Divinity Original Sin. We have interactions with the environment. If you have a skill that it's useful to push a barrel, it might not deal damage directly to an enemy, but you can push that barrel and create an explosion. So it's all, again, we go back to the strategy element. You need to survey your environment and you need to be aware of how to make the best decisions with the action points that you have. But if you have action points, that also means you have a lot of freedom to do as you please.
And where can people learn more about Sword Legacy?
It's easy enough to find if you go to swordlegacy.com. That's the website for the game. But like I said, it's available on Steam, GOG. Our publisher for the PC version is Team 17, so it's pretty easy to find information on Sword Legacy. What I do encourage players to do, though, even if you haven't played Sword Legacy, is actually look for an animation that we have online called Sword Legacy: The Age of Defiance. The Age of Defiance is actually based on one of the lore documents you find in the game. So players who have played Sword Legacy will recognize the animation because they probably found that document while exploring the land of Broken Britannia. But players who haven't played Sword Legacy might be interested in diving deeper into the world. Because Sword Legacy was born as a game, this co-production from Brazil, but it is really a world, and we're focusing on it as an intellectual property, as an IP, and that's why we released this animation to celebrate 1 year of release, and that's why next year with the console release we're also putting together a small graphic novel so that players can learn more about the past of the characters.